Well, like, this don't even gotta try, not the baddest bitch you lie. All right. Yeah, right on the wall, don't. Oh my, that's. My fault. All right. All right. Hey, Mr. Buzzfuzz. How you doing? All right, so we just got set up. So tonight we are building Chatterfang Squirrel General. It's a 3-drop Squirrel Warrior. It's a 3/3. It has Forest Walk, meaning that it can't be blocked for our opponent's control forest. And if one or more tokens would be created under our control, we create that many tokens plus that many 1/1 Squirrel tokens on top of it instead. We also have an activated ability on Chatterfang where we can sacrifice X squirrels. Target creature gets plus X, minus X until end of turn. So we have removal on Chatterfang as well as token creation. So I think a great place to start with a Chatterfang build, and I'm sure we're going to see it plenty of times throughout the night tonight, is Peregrine Took here. Peregrine Took is a 3-mana legendary halfling citizen, and this thing says if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food are created instead. So these two guys both got replacement effects on the way that we create tokens. Chatterfangs is going to make us some squirrels. Peregrine Tokens is going to make us a food whenever we make tokens in general. So any card that we are able to... Alright. Hey! Dark Ronin says Camila the Seed Miser. I believe Camila is the new squirrel commander. Printed, they got their own precon in the Bloomborough precon line. Yeah, here's Camila the Seed Miser. This is a 3-drop legendary squirrel in Golgari colors, just like Chatterfang. It's got Menace, and it says that other squirrels you control have Menace. And whenever you sacrifice one or more foods, you make yourself a squirrel. That's rad. That's going to make a bunch of things. And we can forage too, meaning that we're exiling stuff from our graveyard. And we put a +1/+1 counter on each other squirrel you control. This is great. This gives our squirrels Menace, making them a little bit harder to block, and also... yeah, it'll make them bigger when we activate Forage. So we can exile some stuff from our graveyard. We probably have a lot of sacrifice outlets in a squirrel deck. So we can put things in the graveyard intentionally to exile and make our squirrels bigger with the Seed Miser. Very cool suggestion. I haven't seen any Seed Miser decks yet, but I have seen Chatterfang a whole lot. Or Sack for Good. Yeah, Sack for Food. Hell yeah. Alright. TikTok is not on our side tonight. It's giving us connection issues. Are you having any issues on Twitch, Ronan? Is anybody able to hear me? My computer is not happy. Okay. All of this to say... alright, so that is the Seed Miser. I really am partial to this here Bootlegger's Stash. Bootlegger's Stash is a little 6-mana artifact or enchantment. Not B-O, Bootlegger's Stash. Bootlegger's Stash is a 6-drop artifact that says that lands you control tap and they can make themselves a treasure. This is great, especially if you want to make lots of tokens. Stapling a token effect onto a land will get Chatterfang to go absolutely nuts and make us a silly amount of squirrels. Especially if we have anything that doubles the amount of tokens outputs we got. Like maybe like a Primal Vigor or like a Doubling Season could go nuts in this deck and do a lot of work. That's a bootlegger stash. Speaking of Doubling Season, let's pull up Doubling Season, get that out of the way now. Doubling Season is a 5 mana mono green enchantment. It's $33. Highly recommend a proxy, and it goes in almost all commander decks that run green. Because one, it doubles your token output, or it doubles your counter output, and you probably have one of those going on in your deck somewhere if you're playing green. Great little include. Probably don't need to be told to play Doubling Season, though. Since we're making foods, Academy Manufacturer. Academy Manufacturer is probably the best possible thing we could run. This thing's amazing. This thing will let you win a game in a token deck real easily. It just makes insane amounts of stuff. And it makes all kinds of stuff. This thing's $5, it's 3 mana, it's a colorless artifact creature, and it's worth every penny. This thing says if you would make a clue, a food, or a treasure, you make one of each instead. And if you would make 2 foods or treasures, you will make exponentially those amounts of those other things as well. This thing does lots of work in a token deck. It's probably one of the best cards in a token deck, period, no matter what kind of deck you're running. It just makes you an insane amount of artifacts that are sackable. So if you're doing like an Aristocrats artifacty build, it just goes absolutely nuts because it's tripling the output of tokens you're making. So if you care about the amount of tokens, this thing's going to make it a crazy amount. Or if you care about sacrificing tokens, this thing, every token this thing makes is able to sacrifice itself. Great card. I hope they keep reprinting it to keep its price down. It's excellent. Ronan, thank you so much for all the suggestions. I really appreciate it. Our next one is a Thorn Vault Forager. Thorn Vault Forager. Thorn Vault Forager is a... Oh, it's a Squirrel Ranger. This thing's from Bloomborough. It's $1. It's 2 mana. It taps for mana, or it can add 2 mana in any combination of colors, but you have to forage. To forage, you exile 3 cards from your graveyard, or sacrifice a food. And this thing's got a third activated ability where we can pay 4, search your library for a squirrel card, reveal it, put it in your hand. 10 out of 10. This thing is amazing. This thing is an early game dork. It can sometimes tap for 2 mana if you have some expendable stuff in your graveyard. This thing's amazing. This thing is amazing, actually. Even outside of a squirrel deck, this thing is good. Even without the searching, this thing is good. Very good suggestion, Ronan. I appreciate it. Yeah, tap it, sack of food, get 2 mana. Excellent. Alright. Is YouTube showing us live? It is. It is showing us live on YouTube. Do we have any followers on YouTube? Or any viewers on YouTube? No, but that's fine. It's our very first time going live on YouTube. Hello, everybody. I'm BGM. I do live deck building. Tonight, we are building Chatterfang Squirrel General. If you have a suggestion for our Golgari Squirrels token decks, please put it in the chat. You can see all the Moxfield suggestions on a dated deck list on my Moxfield profile, and that is on the link tree. I can tell you this. Alright, let's talk about a Nuka-Cola vending machine. Nuka-Cola vending machine was printed in the Fallout set. And this thing, holy shit, this thing is $21. Why is this thing $21? Okay, I don't think this thing is worth $21. It's cool. Honestly, I don't think it's worth $5. I don't know. It's okay. You can tap it, and you can make yourself a food token. Whenever you sacrifice a food, you make yourself a tap treasure token. Again, if we're talking about the sheer amount of sacrificable tokens you want in a deck, it's amazing, because every food you sacrifice is going to get you a treasure, and that's just a great amount of value. The thing that I didn't super enjoy about the Nuka-Cola vending machine in my food deck and in my Artifactocrats deck, it felt really slow to me. Like, sure, it makes treasures, but the treasures enter tapped. And I'm pretty sure it only... Yeah, the treasures enter tapped. That makes me sad. Also, it's a kind of a bit of a mana investment. You gotta pay 3 to cast it. You gotta pay 1 to make yourself a food. It's a little clunky to me. It feels a little slow. I can't believe that thing is $21 for the normal version. Alright, Ronan's next suggestion is Hazel's Brewmaster. Hazel's Brewmaster. Hazel's Brewmaster. Hazel's Brewmaster is a 4-mana mono black squirrel warlock. And this thing says... whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile one target card from a graveyard, you make yourself a food token. Foods you control have all activated abilities of a creature card exiled with Hazel's Brewmaster. This thing's amazing. This thing is $13, and it's kind of like an Agatha's Soul Cauldron, except it works for foods. This thing's awesome. Alright, so this thing was printed in the Squirrel Bloomborough Precon. It seems. This thing is rad. This thing is so good. Okay, so this thing is just going to continually make tokens. As long as you can get it to attack, this thing is going to have an easy time attacking because it's got Menace. That's great. So it's going to make a token when it enters, makes one every time it attacks. You can exile stuff from graveyard. You got a little bit of graveyard hate. And the foods can have activated abilities of stuff you exile. This thing's just amazing. This thing's just great. Excellent suggestion, Ronan. I appreciate it. Alright, are we live on TikTok? No. Okay. So, it appears Twitch is the only place we are able to stream tonight. Alright. I quite like a Marionette Master. Marionette Master is a great little Artifacto cards card, and it's got a little sister in the form of the Marionette Apprentice. Marionette Master is a 6-drop mono-black creature with a Fabricate 3. Whenever an artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So what's cool about that Fabricate trigger is that you can upgrade Marionette Master's power so that when you get those death triggers or those artifact triggers, it'll deal 4 damage instead of 1. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Or if you have other things that are going to kill the table, this thing can just spawn 3 servos and give you more stuff to sacrifice. It's a great card. I think it will do a lot of work in a squirrel deck. Same thing with its baby sister, the Marionette Apprentice. This thing is also $3. It makes one thing, and whenever another creature or artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. Great card. 10 out of 10. Would recommend. You also run Experimental Confectioner. Experimental Confectioner. Experimental Confectioner. Experimental Confectioner is a mono black card. It is 3 mana, and it says that when it enters the battlefield, we make ourselves a food token, and whenever you sacrifice a food, you create a 1/1 black rat creature token that cannot block. I quite like this thing. I like that it makes a food when it enters, and also it definitely wants to be in a designated food deck because you want to get those rats. The value off the Experimental Confectioner is off the rats. The rats are still significant even if they can't block. I quite like them. This is a little uncommon from Eldraine. Excuse me. Alright. Mr. BuzzFuzz, good to see you. You are our second viewer tonight. I appreciate you coming out to hang with me. We are building Chatterfang tonight, so if you have a suggestion for Chatterfang, please put it in the comments. We are unable to go live on Twitch, and YouTube won't load to let me see the comments. So it's just y'all in Twitch holding me on tonight. I appreciate you guys being out here. We are attempting to reload TikTok, but the outlook does not look good. So we're going to pull up another token card. I think Primal Vigor sounds fair. Primal Vigor is a rad little 5-drop mono green enchantment. It recently got a reprint in the Wakanda Forever Secret Lair for the Marvel stuff that came out a couple months ago that made everybody upset when it sold out. It was pretty cool. I think it's fair. It's like Doubling Season, but it's for everybody, which makes it $6 instead of $33. It says, if a token would be made, you make twice that many tokens. And if you put a +1/+1 counter on something, twice that many +1/+1 counters would get placed there instead. This thing's fair and balanced because it affects everybody at the table, not just us. So we do have to be mindful when playing in a token matchup, or if someone is just crapping out a bunch of counters. This thing will help them immensely. Alright, TikTok for the 3rd time. Let's see if we can get you live. Yeah, I am less blurry. Thank you for noticing. I spent a long time fucking with my camera settings to get it. It combos with Peregrine Took. Let's talk about Peregrine Took. I think when I opened the live, we did Peregrine Took. Peregrine Took is a rad little 3-drop halfling citizen, and it says if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. You can also sacrifice 3 foods, draw a card. This thing's great. I think this thing goes infinite with quite a few different things. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's great. It makes foods. It's great when used in a fair way, but it is definitely part of a few combos that can be considered CDH, in my opinion. Especially because the things that this thing goes infinite with are also low CMC permanents. They're easy to pop out in the early game. Great suggestion. Alright. Squirrels. Man. I'm sorry, guys. I was really hoping we'd get some more people or be able to connect to TikTok to get them over here. And that way we'd have more cards to talk about. It is a little lonely when it's just us. Man, TikTok, you got like a few more days and then you're retired forever. Can you please just work? Ugh. Well. Okay. City of Death. Let's pull up City of Death. City of Death. Okay, this thing is a Doctor Who card. It's $2.50. It's a saga. It's got 6 steps. The first step says we make a treasure. Then for the remaining 5 steps, we create a token that's a copy of target non-saga token we control. This thing's great. These are just, not proliferate. Populate. These are populate triggers. These almost read exactly like populate triggers, except populate is just creature tokens, and this thing can be any tokens. Very cool. I'm usually not a big fan of the Doctor Who cards because I feel like they're a little bit wordy and a little bit complicated. But this one's simple. This one's a vibe. It's just a populate trigger that can hit non-creature tokens. I like that quite a bit, actually. Very cool. What else we got? Scurry Oak. Scurry Oak sounds like a squirrel card. Scurry Oak. Scurry Oak is a 3-mana creature tree folk 1/2 with Evolve, meaning that whenever a creature with greater power enters the battlefield under our control, we get to slam a counter on our Scurry Oak, and whenever one or more counters are put on Scurry Oak, we get to make ourselves a squirrel. 10 out of 10. We could go lean into a counter build if we wanted to. We saw, not Chatterfang here, but we did see Camila putting counters on squirrels. If we found a way to move those counters from the squirrels onto Scurry Oak, we could potentially make oodles and boodles of squirrels. Could be a great time. You won Yigra. Yigra's a great card. Let's pull up Yigra. I like Yigra. I built Yigra when Yigra first came out, and I like to run all the creatures that sacrifice themselves. I ran a bunch of low CMC creatures that sacrifice themselves for value, and then I ran a bunch of ways to recurbly get back small creatures. Here's Yigra, Eater of All. It is an elemental cat 6/6 with ward, sack of food, but you're going to have foods to sack because this thing turns everything into a food artifact on top of its other types. This thing also says whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, we get to put 2 counters on the cat. It's a very good kitty. Yigra, Eater of All is a very good kitty. Okay. This thing's great. This thing is super fun in the command zone. It wants stuff to die. It wants to go to combat. Nobody really wants to target it because they do have to sacrifice a food and their creatures become food. Great suggestion. Excellent suggestion. Did we talk about... We did not talk about Squirrel Nest yet. Let's talk about Squirrel Nest. Squirrel Nest. Squirrel Nest. Squirrel Nest is a 3-mana green aura where we enchant a land, and enchanted land can tap and make itself a squirrel. Hey, we're making oodles and boodles of squirrels already with our friend Chatterfang here. Great suggestion. It also makes squirrels, which are the relevant creature type for our commander. Alright, let's see if we got anybody in the YouTube chat. See if it'll even load. Alright, did we talk about Arasta of the Endless Wet? Arasta. Arasta's cool, and I really like cards that skew this way. because Arasta says whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, we make a little 1/2 with reach, which is really cool because it's up to our opponents. They give us the thing, and when they give us the thing, we're also going to have Chatterfang give us some squirrels. It's going to be a good time. Whenever they cast an instant or sorcery, we make ourselves a 1/2 with reach, and we make ourselves a squirrel with Chatterfang. It's going to be a good time. Highly recommend. Great suggestion. Also, this thing's been reprinted to death, so it's only 70 cents. Earthcraft. Earthcraft is kind of a CDH card. It's definitely an expensive card. Earthcraft is a 2-mana mono-green enchantment, and it says that we can tap a creature and we can make a mana, or we can tap a creature and untap a target land. Yeah, untap target basic. This thing will just make a silly amount of mana, especially if we can untap our creatures. Chitter Spitter. Chitter Spitter, don't be a quitter. Chitter Spitter, this thing came out, it looks like Modern Horizons 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a token. If you do, put an acorn counter on Chitter Spitter. Squirrels you control get +1/+1 for each acorn counter on Chitter Spitter. And you can tap a green, tap this thing, and you can make yourself a little 1/1 squirrel creature token. This thing's great. It makes your squirrels more significant. And you're gonna have that upkeep trigger. It's gonna get more and more tokens. It's gonna get more and more counters when you sacrifice tokens to the trigger. And your tokens are gonna get big. Very cool. And it can make squirrels. Great card. Excellent card. No one loves a spitter. I'll love anybody, man. Alright, there was that one squirrel that came out in Fallout. It was like a black and green squirrel, and I have no idea what it did. Oh, cool, there's 3 people watching on YouTube. Hey everybody, I'm BGM. If you want to suggest any cards for our Chatterfang deck, please put them in the comments. You can see all the viewer suggestions that we talked about tonight on my Moxfield page, and y'all can get there via the link tree. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. Alright, let's try, the Lynx. The Lynx that makes rats. Here's the Lynx rat. Here's a Hungry Lynx. It's a 2-mana mono-green cat 2/2, and it says cats you control have protection from rats, which is relevant because this thing says at the beginning of your end step, target opponent makes a rat with Death Touch. And whenever a rat dies, we put a +1/+1 counter on each cat we control. This thing's very cool in a cat deck. It wants to be in a cat deck. It was in fact printed in the cat precon a few years ago. But it's really silly to give your opponents Death Touchy rats, and it will impact a game. Maybe we don't run it in this deck because it only gives the cats we control protection from rats. But I do like the way that this card functions in Commander. It's definitely impactful to give your opponents some Death Touchers, and it's silly, and it's fun, and it makes people like you because you're giving them stuff. Highly recommend the Rat Cat. Zach! Thank you for coming and hanging out with me, Zach. We need all the suggestions we can get. I see you here from TikTok now. Okay, wait, am I running TikTok now? Because I have been having awful, terrible technical issues all night. TikTok won't run for me. TikTok won't run for me. YouTube is running for me, but YouTube has about a 45-second delay. So, yeah, we're going to try to run TikTok again in the background. The old Acorn Gang. Old Acorn Gang. Working Gang. Acorn Gang. Oh, it looks so cute. Acorn Gang. Please load Acorn Gang. Did I use all my internet for the night? It's loading. It's trying its bestest. Okay. The old Acorn Gang. 5 mana. Squirrel Warrior. Menace, Trample, Reach. Squirrels you control get the activated ability. Tap, target squirrel gets +2/+2 and gains Trample until the turn. Activate only as a sorcery, and whenever one or more squirrels you control deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. This thing's amazing. It's card draw for squirrels. So Toski's not the only card draw we have access to anymore. This thing can draw some cards. It is the alternate commander in the Squirrel Precon that came out a few months ago with Bloomborough. It's cool, though. It's got some relevant keywords. Itself has a relevant body. It gives your creature, your squirrels, the activated ability to make your other squirrels bigger. So this is kind of like a Voltron squirrel, it appears. It looks like it wants you to have tokens, so you can tap those tokens to make the old Acorn Gang even more significant. I feel like that's this thing's destiny. I feel like that's what it wants. Because it definitely wants to make use of that trample keyword, because this thing has a triggered ability that says when we deal combat damage with squirrels, we get to draw a card. So I think that's the destiny. I think that's what this thing wants. Please correct me if I'm wrong, though. This thing's cool. It's only $4. No, I moved from TikTok to here when I normally watch people's... Thank you, Zach. Thank you again for coming and hanging out. Mr. Buzzfuzz says a Thorn Vault Forager. Thorn Vault Forager. Thorn Vault Forager is a 2... Oh, this thing's amazing. Ronan, thank you again for hanging out with me for like so long. I appreciate it. For a while, Ronan was the only one giving me suggestions. It was just me and Ronan vibing. And Ronan suggested this card already. It's a mana dork. It can tap for green, or it can tap for 2 mana if we get rid of some stuff from our graveyard. Or this thing can tutor. This thing can tutor up squirrels for 4 mana at instant speed. This thing is rad. It is the perfect squirrel dork for a squirrel deck. Squirrel tutor? The squirter? It's a squirrel tutor, squirrel squirter. Alright, squirrel mob. Squirrel friends. Squirrel mob. It doesn't matter how many times I type squirrel, it's never easier to spell. Squirrel mob. Uh-oh, these squirrels are pissed. Squirrel mob is a 2/2 for 3 mana, and it gets +1/+1 for each other squirrel on the battlefield. Tee-hee. This thing's hilarious. I imagine this thing could be real silly in that old Acorn Gang thing we just saw up here. This thing's very silly. Squirrels are typically a go wide strategy, but this thing is clearly the most significant squirrel on the battlefield when you got squirrels on the battlefield. Also, the art is rad. Look how mad this one is. Very cool. Thank you for the suggestion. Warren Soul Trader. Warren Soul Trader is very cool. Warren Soul Trader is a rad little goblin warlock printed in Modern Horizons 3. It's 3 mana, it's mono black, it's a 3/3 zombie goblin wizard, and it's got an activated ability where we pay a single life and we sacrifice another creature. We make ourselves a treasure token at instant speed, I might add, and it's a somewhat free sack outlet. We do have to pay a little bit of life, but you know what? 1 life. Even if we're sacrificing 20 tokens to make 20 treasures, it's still going to be amazing. And when we do that, with Chatterfang on the battlefield, when we sacrifice 1 squirrel to the Warren Soul Trader to make a treasure, we get to make another squirrel. So I'm pretty sure this is infinite right here, if I'm not mistaken. As long as we have the life to pay for this thing's activated ability, like maybe if we have anything that says whenever a creature dies, everybody loses 1, we gain 1. That, an effect like that, plus this thing and Chatterfang says the game is over and we won. I feel like it's really easy to just turn that into a 3-piece combo. Which isn't my vibe per se, but it is a vibe of some people. Okay. Alright, let's try to go live on TikTok again. Alright. Pen and Blade. Pen and Blade. Pen and Blade. Okay, what the hell is this? I am unfamiliar with Pen and Blade. It's a 3 mana artifact equipment. It's colorless and it looks very anime. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control. That's good. Okay, we make 1 significant guy. Give him the sword. Turn him into a Voltron with a big army behind him. Very cool. Very interesting. Also 40 cents. We love a budget card here. Could also be really fun in Shroofus. Bloodroot Apothecary. Let's talk about a Bloodroot Apothecary. Bloodroot Apothecary is a 3-mana mono green squirrel druid with Toxic 2. Oh god, it's this thing. It's $7. It's a 3/3, and it says whenever it enters, you and target opponent each create a treasure token. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-creature token, that player gets 2 poison counters. Disgusting. Absolutely vile. I hate it. It turns off all the treasure decks. It turns off the food decks. It turns off the clue decks. It's crazy. Also, if it messes with blood, it messes with all the non-creature tokens, and it says that they only have to sacrifice 4 or 5 of them, and they're dead. Just dead. Just dead to the squirrel thing. This thing made a bunch of waves in CEDH communities when it first came out, and it's... I still would... I would probably remove this. If I'm playing, like, anything where I want to be sacrificing a bunch of tokens, this thing has to be removed, or you will die. You'll just die. And if it was, like, if it was one poison, if it was a one singular poison, everything would be fine. But no, it's 2. It's 2 poison. Wizards. Okay. It's a win con in your group hug. Yeah, you could kill people with Chatterfang with the Pen and Blade because it has Forest Walk. Very cool. Alright. Well, we tried. Alright. Oh my god, my computer's not happy with that. Alright, that's fine. Exit now. Yeah, let's exit that. Okay. Swarmyard Massacre. Swarmyard Massacre. Swarmyard Massacre is hard to spell. Swarmyard Massacre. This thing is from the Squirrel Bloomburrow Precon. It's a mono black 5-mana $7 sorcery. Create 2 squirrel creature tokens. Then each creature that isn't an insect, rat, spider, squirrel gets -1/-1 on the turn for each creature you control that is one of those creatures. Very cool. So this is probably going to be a one-sided board wipe. If we got like 10 rats, we are just going to wipe our opponent's boards, and this thing's going to do a bunch of work. Dalbus, thank you very much for the suggestion. Dalbus says Killer Service. Hello, everybody. I am Bigger Gayer Magic. I use green screen effects to make silly little Magic the Gathering videos on TikTok or wherever I'm going to be making videos nowadays. On lives, we do community deck building. If you have a suggestion for our commander, Chatterfang, please put it in the chat. If we talk about it, you can see the card on the dated Moxfield page, and y'all can get to the Moxfield page via the link tree. Thanks for hanging out with me. This is Killer Service. Killer Service is a mono-green 3-drop enchantment, and it looks like it was printed in the Murders of Karlov Manor Precon. When Killer Service enters the battlefield, you create foods equal to the number of opponents you got. So in Commander, this thing's probably going to make us 3 foods, and at the beginning of your end step, you may pay 2 and sacrifice a token, probably a food. If you do, you make yourself a little 4/4 Rhino. Very cool. So this thing enters, it makes multiple foods, which would give us multiple squirrels off the Chatterfang trigger, and that's cool and significant. Or, whenever we make a Rhino, Chatterfang will also make us a squirrel on top of the Rhino. Very cool. I like it a lot. And it says you may pay 2 and sacrifice a token. So that's cool. So it doesn't have to be a creature token, but we probably are going to have enough of those to sacrifice. So we could be trading up our squirrels from Chatterfang into Rhinos. Very cool. I vibe. I vibe hard. I also love that it's 50 cents. And that it's going to make multiple tokens throughout the course of the game. Because when it enters, it makes some tokens, and then at the upkeep, or at the beginning of your end step, you get triggers, and you get another chance to make tokens. Very cool. I like it a lot. Toski! We got to talk about Toski. I can't believe we haven't talked about Toski yet. Toski Buried of Secrets is a 4-mana, mono-green, legendary squirrel, and it says that it can't be countered, it has indestructible, and it attacks each combat if able, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, we draw ourselves a card. This thing's going to draw us oodles and oodles of cards over the course of a game. Whenever a creature you control... But yeah, because it counts the number of creatures. So if we have a bunch of squirrels, we're going to draw a bunch of cards. It's going to be silly. It's going to be nuts. Ha ha ha. Yeah, it's real cool. Great. A very good squirrel. I've seen quite a few little squirrel Toski mono green Voltron decks, and they've messed me up before. Having just a creature with Indestructible in the command zone that draws you cards throughout a good game, great time. Enduring Vitality. Zach says Enduring Vitality. Enduring Vitality is a 3-mana enchantment creature Elk Glimmer. I like the cycle of glimmers from Duskmourn. I think they're pretty cool. And this one says the creatures you control tap for mana, and you have to kill the deer twice. Because when the deer dies the first time, it comes back as a non-creature enchantment. The deer's great. The deer's $10. The deer's only going to go up in price. I like the deer. It's a very good deer. You're a very good boy. Excellent card. Excellent card. Death 3. Alright. Alright, guys. That is all the suggestions we got for tonight. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for my first YouTube live session and my second Twitch live session ever. Normally, we would try to do TikTok on top of this, but it's not working with us tonight. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thanks for working on Toski. Excuse me. Thank you for working on Chatterfang with me. Join the Discord if you want to suggest some decks for live deck techs. And check out my Moxfield page if you want to see any of the cards we talked about tonight. I hope you all have a good night.